After one patient resisted sedation and broke free, the staff witnessed a transformation that defied all science and left a trail of bodies behind. I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your terrifying host. If you're already part of our pack, your support means everything to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this. Or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. I've worked night shifts as a paramedic in Detroit for 11 years. I've seen overdoses, stabbings, shootings, and more psychotic breaks than I care to count. But nothing could have prepared me for what we picked up under the I-75 overpass that night. Dispatch called us in at 2:48 a.m. A man had been spotted crawling on the edge of the highway, covered in blood. Possible hit and run, they said. By the time we arrived, the cops had already cordoned off the area, and the guy was kneeling in the shoulder lane, shivering, arms wrapped around himself like he was freezing, even though it was 77 degrees Fahrenheit. He wasn't speaking. He wasn't reacting to commands, just muttering something over and over like a scratched record. I remember looking into his eyes as we approached. Something about them unsettled me. Too wide, too dark, too focused on something behind me that wasn't there. His name, according to the expired ID in his torn wallet, was Darren O'Keefe, 37, from Dearborn. There was blood all over his shirt, but no wounds, at least none that were his. As I helped load him into the rig, I noticed something else, a strange stench clinging to him. Not just blood, not vomit. It was like the air around him was tainted, coppery, earthy, and something else I couldn't place, like wet fur left in the sun too long. Darren didn't resist, didn't speak, just kept muttering something that sounded like, "He's not done. He's not done." We got him to Detroit Mercy Hospital at 3:12 a.m. Nurses took over immediately, guiding the stretcher toward psychiatric triage. He didn't flinch at the light, didn't react to touch or temperature, but his temperature was high, over 105 degrees, and climbing. They tried ice packs, fluids, medication. I stood at the nurse's station, finishing the report, when a tech named Brody walked past me, looking pale. "Yo," he said. "You hear what he said?" I shook my head. Still mumbling the same thing? Brody looked at me like he wanted to unsee what he'd heard. He said there's another one coming, and when the blood moon rises, he'll be ready. I chuckled uneasily. Yeah, sounds like a full-blown psychotic break. But inside, something itched. I couldn't forget those eyes, those teeth, slightly too sharp. And his fingernails, they looked more like claws. At 3:26 a.m., and the call came through the intercom. Security to Psych Wing. Immediate assistance. That's not uncommon. Delusional patients can be violent, but this time, the voice was shaking. Before I could move, 2 security guards rushed past. I followed out of instinct. When I got to the hallway outside room 309, I saw it. The bed was overturned. Restraint straps had been ripped. Not undone. Ripped. One guard was holding his arm, bleeding from what looked like a bite mark. The other guard stood frozen, pointing toward the open door. Inside, Darren was curled in the corner, breathing heavily, his back rising and falling like he was hyperventilating. But his spine looked wrong. It arched too high, and I swear I saw hair, thick, black hair, spreading across his shoulders. The nurse on duty, Angela Pritchard, whispered, "That's not human anymore." Nobody moved, nobody even breathed. Then Darren's head snapped up, his eyes locked on us, and he smiled. A slow, unnatural grin that stretched further than any face should. Before anyone could react, he stood up and leapt toward us. I never saw someone move that fast. The guard in front tried to block him. I saw Darren's hand, or what used to be a hand, slam into the guy's chest and throw him against the wall like a rag doll. Blood sprayed, bones cracked. We scattered, screaming for backup. As I turned the corner, I heard a sound behind me that I will never forget. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a man screaming. It was something in between, and it was getting closer. I didn't go home after that. I should have. I should have walked out, handed in my report, and pretended none of it happened. But something about the way Darren looked at us, about the way he moved, kept my feet planted in that hospital. By 3:45 a.m., Darren had been secured again, this time under maximum lockdown protocols. They used leather restraints, reinforced straps, and chemical sedation cocktails meant for patients in extreme psychotic states. Stuff strong enough to knock a man out for 8 hours within minutes. He was out cold by the time I passed his room again. Monitors showed heart rate elevated but steady. Body temperature still dangerously high, hovering around 106.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Angela was at the nurse's station, her hands trembling as she typed up the incident. "You all right?" I asked. She looked at me with eyes that had already seen too much tonight. "He broke Paul's ribs," she whispered. "Tore right through the jacket like it was paper." "You saw it?" I nodded. "They said the meds worked?" She looked at the monitor. "For now." They didn't. 2 hours later, at 5:31 a.m., he woke up. No buildup, no signs. 1 second he was unconscious. The next, he opened his eyes and started pulling against the straps. The restraints didn't snap this time, but they groaned, loudly. The psychiatrist on call, Dr. Isaac Monroe, was already reviewing his file when Darren began speaking again. Only this time, it was in a language nobody recognized. I stood behind the glass with Angela and 2 guards. His voice came low at first, but grew deeper, louder, like it was coming from somewhere deeper in his chest than human anatomy allowed. The doctor pressed the intercom. "Darren, you need to calm down. You're safe here." Darren's eyes turned to the camera. "Safe?" he said, clearly this time. His voice had dropped. Not just in pitch, in tone. There was something primal about it. Then he laughed. A dry, joyless laugh that didn't match the expression on his face. "Do you think this place will hold me?" he said. "Do you think drugs will stop what's coming?" Dr. Monroe didn't respond, just signaled to up the sedation again. 2 orderlies entered the room, cautiously, both armed with injectables. That's when Darren screamed, and the walls shook. The lights flickered. For half a second, the hallway went dark. When they came back on, both orderlies were on the floor, twitching, convulsing. One of them had blood pouring from his ear. The other had 3 deep scratches across his neck. The syringe had shattered on impact. Darren hadn't moved from the bed. The straps were still intact, but his bones, they weren't. His arms looked longer. The joints bent at odd angles. Hair now covered most of his forearms, and his teeth were visibly larger, sharper. Angela gasped beside me. "His body's changing." I backed away. "This isn't a psychotic break." Then I noticed something else. On his skin, across his chest and down his ribs, symbols. Scar-like, raised, carved into his flesh years ago. They looked tribal, not decorative, ritualistic. "What the hell is that?" I asked. No one answered. Then Darren leaned forward, pulling the restraints tight, and said clearly, "It's starting." He let out a sound, not a scream, not a roar. Something deeper, and the heart monitor flatlined. We rushed in. He wasn't dead. He was gone. Gone from the bed, gone from the room. The window, 3 inches thick, was cracked at the center. The kind of crack you see after a truck hits reinforced glass. Angela stepped into the room, slowly. That's when we heard the scream from downstairs. Not his, someone else's. And that's when we knew he wasn't just loose. He was hunting. The scream came from the East Wing, long-term psych patients. It wasn't one of those startled yelps or panicked cries you hear from time to time in hospitals. This was pure horror. That guttural, final sound before death kind of scream. We all froze when we heard it. Then the lights in the hallway flickered again, and the backup generators kicked in. Angela looked at me. "He's in the psych wing." "I thought that room was sealed," I said. It was. We rushed toward the ward, passing dazed patients peeking through cracked doors, IV lines swinging behind them. The closer we got, the colder it felt, like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in just a few steps. The air was thick, like something foul had been dragged through it. When we reached the isolation hall, one of the guards, Daniel Mackey, big guy, ex-Marine, was already there, holding a flashlight and a baton. His eyes were wide. "I heard something running. Not walking, running. Fast as hell." He pointed to the end of the corridor, where a faint trail of blood led around a corner. We turned it and stopped. Room 318. The door was splintered, not kicked, not broken open, shredded. There were deep gouges in the wood, like it had been torn apart by claws. Inside, the walls were painted in blood. The mattress was torn to shreds. A nurse, Carmen Sullivan, lay in the corner, her neck opened from ear to collarbone, her face frozen in a scream she never finished. Angela covered her mouth and turned away. I knelt down beside the body. Her ID badge was still clipped to her scrubs. No signs of defensive wounds. She never had a chance. Daniel muttered behind me. "No way a man did this." "He's not a man anymore," I said. I don't know why I believed it then. I hadn't seen the full transformation yet. But the things I had seen, the bones, the eyes, the symbols, all of it pointed to something inhuman. We moved further down the corridor. Another room door was wide open. This one was empty. Just blood smeared across the floor and a bloody handprint on the inside of the window, as if someone tried to claw their way out. That's when we heard the dragging sound. Something scraping against the tiles. Heavy, uneven. We followed it to the fire escape door at the far end. Blood led right up to it. The lock had been ripped clean off. Not broken. Ripped. "He's moving through the hospital," Angela said, her voice trembling. "We need to evacuate." "Too late," Daniel replied. "Too many wings, too many patients. He could be anywhere." A crash came from above us, somewhere on the 3rd floor. It sounded like metal collapsing. Daniel clicked his radio. "This is Officer Mackey. Possible intruder in Psych Wing. 2 medical staff confirmed dead. Suspect is extremely violent. Requesting immediate lockdown of all upper floors." We turned back toward the elevator banks, moving fast. Then the hallway lights shut off completely. Only our flashlights lit the path. The beam cut through the dark, but it felt like shining a light into a grave. We reached the elevators. All 3 were on different floors. One of them was coming down. "Who called it?" Angela whispered. None of us had. The floor counter above the elevator ticked 4, 3, 2. We raised our flashlights as the door opened. The inside was drenched in blood, and hanging from the ceiling by their own stethoscope was Dr. Isaac Monroe, swaying gently, his body eviscerated, chest torn open as if mauled by a bear. Angela screamed. Daniel pulled her back. "Don't look." I stepped forward and saw something worse. Carved into Dr. Monroe's abdomen, deep and fresh, was a word. Awakened. We backed away from the elevator just as the lights flickered once more, and for a split second, just a blink, we saw him. Darren. But not the man from the ambulance. Not even close. 7 feet tall, twisted, covered in thick, black hair, mouth stretched into a monstrous grin, eyes glowing with a faint, sickly yellow. He was standing at the end of the hallway, where the shadows were thicker. Then he dropped onto all fours and bolted toward us. We ran, back into the stairwell. Daniel slammed the door shut behind us and shoved a metal cabinet in front of it. "Where the hell do we go?" Angela cried. "He's hunting," I said, breathless. "He's not lashing out, he's targeting." "Targeting what?" Daniel asked. I didn't answer, because in that moment I realized I already knew. And the next place he was going was the maternity wing. We didn't waste time. The stairs took us down 2 levels, then across a connector corridor that led toward the north wing, where the maternity and neonatal units were housed. As we moved, the silence in the hospital felt wrong. Like every patient and staff member had instinctively stopped moving, stopped breathing, as if they too sensed the predator loose among them. Daniel led the way, flashlight sweeping through the dark. Angela was behind me, pale and shaking, still clutching the walkie she'd taken from the desk. I held mine tight, thumb ready on the push-to-talk button. "Dispatch, this is paramedic Nolan Carter. Hostile entity inside Detroit Mercy Hospital. We have multiple casualties and an unknown number of patients in danger. Suspect is not human. Repeat, not human." Static. No reply. The hospital's internal comms were either down or being jammed. That only confirmed one thing. This wasn't just some psychotic break. Something older was unfolding here. Something planned. When we reached the north wing, everything was too quiet. The security doors had been pried open, steel bent like it was aluminum foil. Inside, the hallway was lit only by the emergency lights. Red, dim, pulsing. A nurse stood frozen in the middle of the corridor, wide-eyed, holding a newborn wrapped in a blood-stained blanket. We approached carefully. "Where is he?" I asked. She didn't speak. Angela moved to her side and gently took the baby. The nurse finally whispered, "He was here. I don't know how he got past me. He just appeared. Moved like a shadow." Daniel glanced at the floor. "There's blood here, and drag marks." We followed the trail. Around the corner, past the nurse's station, we found the first body. A pediatrician, name tag still pinned to his coat. His throat was ripped wide open, his entire chest cavity torn apart. The stench of blood and something else, sulfur, was thick in the air. Further down the hall, we heard a metallic clatter. Daniel raised his baton and turned the corner fast. He froze. I came up behind him. The hallway was shredded. Ceiling panels torn down, lights shattered. Blood smeared across the walls in wide handprints, some human, some not. One of the hospital beds had been flipped onto its side, its frame bent at the middle like it had been crushed by weight far beyond what it was designed for. And then we saw her. Another nurse, Harper Voss, was pinned against the wall by a metal rod shoved through her abdomen. Her eyes were open. Her mouth moved, trying to say something. Blood gurgled in her throat. I rushed to her. "Harper, we're here. Stay with me." Her eyes darted toward the far end of the hallway. "He's still here," she whispered. "He's watching." We looked down the hall. There was nothing, just the end wall and a broken window. Angela stepped back, holding the baby tighter. "We have to get out." Daniel nodded. "We'll take the maintenance stairwell down. It's narrow. He won't fit easily." I turned back to Harper to reassure her, but she was already gone. Her eyes glazed over, lips still parted. That was the second nurse we'd lost in under 20 minutes. As we made our way toward the stairwell, Angela spoke. "This isn't random." "What do you mean?" I asked. "He's killing selectively. Staff, security. People with authority. Daniel added, "Except Dr. Monroe. He carved into that guy." I remembered the word burned into his flesh. Awakened. "He's making a statement," I said. We reached the stairwell and opened the door. It reeked of something wild. Like a dead animal had been left to rot in the summer heat. But there was no time to hesitate. We moved fast, down 2 floors, then stopped. Something was breathing down there, not just heavy, wet. It echoed through the stairwell like steam pushing through a pipe. Daniel motioned for us to go back up. Too late. A shadow moved up the stairs below us. Fast. Crawling, almost insect-like. We turned and ran. Daniel stayed behind for half a second longer, baton raised. Then the scream came. We didn't look back. We reached the landing and burst through the fire door into the surgical wing. Angela clutched the baby tighter, sobbing. "Daniel," she whispered. We stopped running. We listened, but all we heard was the dragging sound again. Getting closer. I looked back through the stairwell window. The last thing I saw was Daniel's body being pulled down the stairs by something enormous and covered in dark, wet fur. One leg was missing. The wall was streaked with blood. I slammed the door shut. Angela whispered, "He's killing everyone who gets in his way." I looked at the baby in her arms. "Then we don't get in his way. But where do we go?" There was only one answer. "To the basement. If we can get to the generator room, maybe we can reset the systems. Get the security lockdown working again. Trap him." As we moved into the dark corridor, I heard something behind us, a soft patter, closer. And then the unmistakable sound of claws scraping against tile. He was coming again, and this time, we had nowhere else to run. The hallway stretched ahead of us like a tunnel into hell. Lights flickered overhead. Each step we took echoed down the corridor, bouncing off blood-smeared walls and broken glass. Somewhere behind us, claws scraped the floor, slowly, deliberately. He was tracking us, not rushing. He didn't need to. He knew we had nowhere else to go. Angela cradled the baby tighter, whispering something under her breath. Maybe a prayer. Maybe just trying to keep herself sane. I led the way with the flashlight, searching for the double doors that led to the utility hallway. Past the operating rooms, past the darkened recovery ward, we found them, jammed halfway open, one side cracked and bent. I shoved it wider with my shoulder. The hinges groaned. We slipped through and into the pitch-black corridor beyond. At the far end, the basement stairwell. Behind us, silence. That silence was worse than the sounds. It meant he was waiting, watching. The basement of Detroit Mercy Hospital was nothing like the rest of the building. It was older, much older. Original foundation, brick-lined tunnels, cramped, unlit rooms. A perfect place to vanish. Or to die. We reached the bottom of the stairs. I pushed the metal door open, and we stepped into the darkness. The stench hit us immediately. Rot. Mold. And something else. Something sweet and wrong. Like rotting meat mixed with chemicals. We passed old supply rooms. Empty gurneys. Forgotten wheelchairs. Angela whispered, "Why the basement?" "If we can reach the generator control room, we might be able to reboot the power systems, relock the doors, trap him inside. And if he's already down here? Then we don't stop moving." The corridor turned sharply, and we emerged into the main service hallway. Pipes lined the ceiling. Rust dripped from overhead. The air was thicker here, like something was breathing in the same space we were, just out of sight. We reached the generator room. It was open. That wasn't good. I stepped in first, scanning the room. Banks of servers, switch panels. A wall-mounted screen blinking, "Error, system override." "He's disabled the lockdown protocols. I said. Angela stared at me. How? He's not just a monster. He's something else. Something older. Then we heard it. Metal screeching behind us. We spun around. The door had been slammed shut. I ran back, tried the handle. Locked. From the outside. Angela backed toward the wall, still clutching the baby. Then the lights in the generator room went out. Complete black. I flicked my flashlight back on. The beam flickered. In the far corner, something moved. A shadow peeled away from the wall. And then he was there, standing, watching. Twice the size he was before. Massive shoulders. Long matted hair hanging from his arms. His chest was heaving, and I could see thick veins pulsing beneath the skin. His eyes burned yellow in the dark, and his mouth was parted slightly, revealing rows of wet, jagged teeth. I stepped in front of Angela and raised the only weapon I had, a broken piece of pipe from the floor. He tilted his head and smiled. Then he charged. I swung the pipe, it connected with his shoulder and bounced off like I'd hit a brick wall. He swiped, claws grazing my side. I went down hard, smashing into a rack of breakers. Angela screamed. The baby wailed. Darren turned toward them. I reached out blindly and pulled one of the circuit breakers down. Sparks exploded. A loud crack echoed through the room. Then the overhead sprinklers activated, triggered by the electrical short. Water rained down. And Darren screamed, not in pain, but in rage. He lunged at me, claws raking the floor just inches from my head. I crawled toward Angela, grabbed her wrist. We go now! We forced the emergency hatch open, a narrow service tunnel that ran parallel to the basement corridor. No lights. Just enough room to crawl. Angela passed me the baby. Then she followed, heart pounding, hands scraping against the concrete. Behind us, Darren roared again, this time shaking the walls. He couldn't fit through the hatch, but we knew it wouldn't stop him for long. We emerged on the other side into the abandoned morgue. It was colder here, the air still, silent. Angela collapsed against the wall, sobbing. I checked the baby, still breathing, still warm. Then we heard it, not from the hatch, from the ceiling. He was climbing through the ductwork, hunting. Angela looked at me, eyes wild. He won't stop. He'll kill every single person in this hospital. We won't let him. How? I looked down at my bleeding side, my shaking hands, my makeshift weapon that hadn't done anything to slow him down. And I realized the truth. We couldn't kill him, but maybe we could trap him, and it would cost us everything. We stayed in the morgue longer than we should have. Angela sat against the wall, holding the baby close, whispering quiet reassurances neither of them believed. The smell of antiseptic still lingered here, faint traces of bleach and ammonia, but it couldn't mask the scent leaking through the vents. Wet fur, old blood, rage. I stood by the double doors, pipe still in hand, flashlight flickering. My side throbbed. 3 long slashes. Deep enough to burn, but not bleed out. I wouldn't last long if he hit me again. Above us, something moved. The ventilation shaft groaned, then dented inward. He was tracking us. Angela looked at me, her eyes wide. We can't outrun him. I know. So what now? We used the sublevel. There was a passage beneath the morgue, a maintenance route that ran below the hospital, connecting to the old steam tunnels. It hadn't been used in decades. Most people didn't even know it existed. But I did. I'd seen the blueprints once, years ago, during a renovation inspection. We moved fast, pushing aside an old gurney that blocked the trapdoor in the corner of the room. It took everything I had to pry it open. The hinges shrieked, dust pouring from the ceiling like ash. A ladder dropped down into darkness. I went first. The tunnel was narrow, barely 5 feet high, Pipes ran along the walls, some leaking, others cracked. The air was humid, cloying. The temperature rose quickly. From the decay, the rust, and the oppressive heat, I guessed we were at least 25 feet underground. Angela followed, baby tucked close to her chest. We ran. The tunnel split ahead. One direction curved toward the incinerator. The other led to the overflow chamber. I chose the latter. "I have a plan," I said. Angela stared at me. "Is it a good one?" "It's the only one." We reached the overflow chamber, an old water reserve once used during emergency outages. The tank was dry now. But the steel walls were 10 inches thick, reinforced. And more importantly, there was only one way in. If we could get him in there and seal the exit. Angela said what I was thinking. "You want to trap yourself in there with him?" I nodded. She didn't argue. She knew I was right. We set the baby in the corner of the room, wrapped tightly in clean linen Angela had brought from the maternity wing. "I'll distract him," I said. "When he enters, you slam the valve. Lock it shut. Don't wait for me. I can't leave you in there. You don't have a choice." She looked at me for a long time, then nodded. We heard it then, the clang of the trapdoor. He had followed. Footsteps echoed through the tunnel, heavy, slow. He was savoring it now. I stepped out into the tunnel and shouted, "You want me? Come and get me!" Silence. Then something moved fast. Too fast. He emerged from the dark like a freight train. Massive. Limbs longer. Muscles stretched tight under mottled fur. His mouth was slick with blood. His chest heaved, and steam rolled off his skin from the heat. He saw me and smiled. I turned and ran into the chamber. Angela was waiting. The moment I passed the threshold, she pulled the lever. The steel door slammed down. Boom. I turned to face him. He skidded to a stop inside, realizing, too late, what had happened. He was trapped. He let out a low growl and charged. The fight was short and savage. He slammed into me, claws flashing. I ducked, swung the pipe. Connected with his jaw. It cracked, but didn't stop him. He grabbed me by the throat, lifted me off the ground, and hurled me across the room. I hit the wall hard. Something cracked in my back. I couldn't breathe. He stalked forward. I grabbed the pipe again. One last swing. This time, I went for the leg. It broke. He howled. Fell to one knee. I crawled toward the far side of the chamber. Behind him, Angela's voice came faintly through the hatch. "Nolan!" I didn't answer. Couldn't. The monster turned toward me, rage boiling in his eyes. But then he stopped, sniffed the air, and looked toward the baby. I realized what was happening. He didn't want to kill, not now. He wanted to change the child, make it like him, a successor. I grabbed the last tool I had, an old oxygen tank left in the corner. I rolled it across the floor. Darren looked back. I struck the metal valve with the pipe. It sparked. The tank exploded. Flames rolled through the chamber, searing heat. Screams, his, not mine. I collapsed. Darkness swallowing everything. Outside, through the thick door, I heard Angela scream, but it was too late. I'd done what I could, or so I thought, because even as I passed out, I saw it. His hand, burned, but still moving, still changing, still alive. I woke up on the floor of the overflow chamber. Everything hurt. The air was thick with smoke, and the walls were scorched black. My ears rang with the aftershock of the explosion, and every breath scraped like fire down my throat. I blinked, expecting to see flames, death, or nothing at all. But he was still there. Darren. Burned. Collapsed against the far wall. One leg twisted beneath him, half his face charred. Patches of fur had melted off, revealing raw, blistered flesh underneath. But his chest rose and fell, shallow, uneven, still breathing. I couldn't move, could barely think, but I knew I hadn't finished it. Outside the sealed door, I heard pounding. Angela. "Nolan! Nolan, are you alive?" I tried to answer. Only blood came out. Then something shifted in the chamber. I turned my head, slow, agonizing. Darren's body spasmed. His limbs twitched, and then his burned hand gripped the floor. He was healing. Fast. The blackened skin on his arm peeled, revealing fresh red tissue beneath it. His spine cracked back into alignment. His jawbone, shattered moments ago, began to realign itself. I tried to crawl. Didn't get far. The steel door behind me screeched. Someone outside was trying to force it open. Angela's voice came again. "Hold on, we're getting you out." I looked back at Darren. He stood up, slowly. His left leg snapped loudly into place. Bones reknit. Flesh regrew over seared wounds like ivy reclaiming a wall. And then he opened his eyes. The yellow glow returned, but now it looked different. He wasn't just animal anymore. He was aware. And he was angry. Angela managed to force the door open 6 inches. Her face appeared in the gap. "Nolan, get out of there!" "I can't," I gasped. "He's—" Too late. Darren moved. Fast. Faster than I'd ever seen. He leapt toward the door. Angela screamed and let go of the lever, slamming the door shut again. He crashed into it, and the entire chamber shook. I backed away, dragging myself with one arm, every inch agony. He turned toward me again, but he didn't pounce. He just stared. Then he said something. In English. His voice cracked, raw from the fire. "You think this ends here?" I didn't respond. Couldn't. He stepped closer. "I am not the first, and I won't be the last. The blood moon rises in 6 nights. His chest heaved. And then, "The others wake." I gritted my teeth. "You're alone." He smiled. "No, I'm just the beginning." Suddenly, a loud burst of static erupted behind the wall. Angela's voice came over the intercom. "We rerouted power. Get ready." A mechanical hiss filled the room. The emergency hatch opened again. Light flooded in. Darren turned toward it. Angela was there, armed with a fire axe and a flashlight. He lunged. She swung. The axe hit his arm. Blood sprayed. He roared in pain, but it bought us seconds. She grabbed me by the collar, pulling me through the hatch. Darren clawed at the steel, howling. Angela sealed it shut. We collapsed in the corridor. Smoke still choked the air. Footsteps echoed from down the hall. Police. Finally. 3 officers rushed toward us, weapons raised. One of them, Sergeant Mason Geller, shouted, "What the hell is that thing?" Angela held the axe in one hand, blood dripping from the blade. "I don't know what he is," she said, "but he's not human." "Is he dead?" Geller asked. I shook my head. "He's healing. Fast. If we don't act now, he's getting out." The sergeant hesitated, then nodded. He turned to one of the officers. "Get C4 from the van. We're sealing the chamber, permanently." As the others moved, Angela pulled me to my feet. We walked, slow, battered, toward the exit. Every hallway we passed bore marks of what Darren had done. Claw marks in the walls, blood, body parts, and in one corridor, carved deep into the concrete. 6 nights. Angela looked at me. "What happens in 6 nights?" I didn't answer. Because deep down, I already knew. The explosion rocked the foundation of the hospital. From the outside, it probably looked like a boiler rupture, something technical, something explainable. That's the version they went with later. Mechanical failure in a disused sublevel, no casualties. A perfectly packaged lie for the news cycle. But I was there when they wired the charges. Sergeant Geller placed the C4 around the sealed chamber's entry point. His hands trembled, but his face remained hard, focused. He knew what was at stake. Angela and I watched from behind the safety barrier, the baby still wrapped in her arms, somehow still asleep through it all. When the countdown reached 0, there was a sharp jolt, a muffled boom, then silence. Dust rolled down the hallway. The door was buried. The chamber collapsed. The creature, Darren, trapped beneath a mountain of rubble and steel. At least, that's what we hoped. We were taken in for questioning by the FBI within hours. Agents from the Detroit field office arrived before sunrise. Black suits, blank faces. One of them, Agent Kimberly Rhodes, led the debrief. She wasn't interested in the supernatural. She wanted a containable narrative. Psychotic patient escaped restraint. Hospital systems failed. Structural collapse killed him. No known motive. Angela looked at me across the table. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. Rhodes handed us NDAs, non-disclosure agreements thicker than most Bibles. We signed them. Not because we believed it was over, but because we knew the truth wouldn't help anyone. 2 days later, I was discharged from Detroit Mercy. My ribs were bruised, my side still burned. But I could walk. Angela was released too. She left with the baby, choosing not to give his name or the identity of the mother. Said it wasn't safe. We didn't argue. Because deep down, I think we both knew the truth about that child. He wasn't just a bystander. He was a target. Or maybe something more. I went back once. To the hospital. It was quiet, cleaned, the corridors repainted, the damage erased. You'd never guess what had happened there. Except for one thing. In the basement hallway, just past the fire exit near the old morgue, someone had painted over the walls. Fresh white paint. But if you stood close enough, you could still see it beneath. Carved deep into the concrete. 6 nights. It had been 5. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the moon rise from my apartment window. Full, blood red, just like Darren said it would be. No alarms, no screams, no claw marks on the walls. But at 2:17 a.m., I got a call. No ID, just static at first. Then a voice, Angela's. They're here. I grabbed my keys, my flashlight, the emergency bag I never unpacked after that night. And as I opened the door to leave, I saw something on the floor, tufts of fur. Dark, coarse, still warm. The truth is, we didn't stop anything. We delayed it. Whatever Darren was, whatever made him, there are more of them. And they're waking up. I can feel it. In the bones that still ache from that fight. In the dreams I can't shake. In the city that's slowly starting to go quiet after dark. 6 nights have passed, and the hunt has already begun. Nolan's experience beneath Detroit Mercy Hospital is a brutal reminder that some creatures don't belong in fairy tales. They live in the shadows, waiting to return. The rise of the blood moon was only the beginning. And Mr. Midnight Horror will be watching for what comes next. If you felt the tension of that chase and the horror of that transformation, like the video and tell us, what moment chilled you the most? Share this with someone who still believes hospitals are safe. They need to know what hunts inside sterile walls. And if you've got the courage to stay ahead of the nightmare, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and turn on notifications, so when darkness comes again, you won't be facing it alone.